welcome to Lawsuits and Lessons. We are back. Myself, Steve Cooper, and the wonderful John Foggerholm are in studio with a special guest tonight. And, we're going to talk about some entrepreneurship, some law stuff, maybe some business, some life. And John, I got to tell you, I had a very nice article written about me a few weeks ago if you can see my beautiful picture there, in a paper called the Marlton Sun, the Haddonfield Sun. It's all these papers. I was getting texts from people, and you'll like this. It's about my show, Cooper Talk, but it does say this is our first press. It's small, but our first press. It says Cooper also hosts two other podcasts, Coop's Comedy Corner and the Business Focused Lawsuits and Lessons.
All right, way to go, old school.
So how you been? You been good? You've been good. I haven't seen you for a while.
Yeah, life is good, man. I have no complaints. Business is good, family's good. The Spurs are good.
Yeah. The Sixers are sucking anyway. They're number 6, like for the play, and I'm like, why do we even play? And I'm not going to go into that because we have a great guest. I met him when I first moved back from LA, and I was doing business development, and I met him, and since then he was in real estate then, but he's built like this conglomerate of different businesses. He's a real shaker and mover, and like you, he's a family man, and I'm glad to call him a friend. And it's Mr. Devin DiNofa. How you doing, Devin?
Good. I am grateful to be on a Stephen Cooper podcast, all the different media, whether it's in person or virtual. I'm honored to be a part of it. And John, it's great to meet you.
Tell us a little about first, a quick capsule of what you do, and then we're going to ask some more questions about how you got there, because I know you have a very cool background. You've done a lot of restaurant management, all this different stuff, but we want to find out. Tell us in a little nutshell, because you have this new company you're working on. Tell us just a nutshell of what you're doing.
First and foremost, I have a company called Legacy Real Estate, which is a residential real estate company. We do Philadelphia, New Jersey. So that's like the foundational business. That real estate was kind of my first step into the professional world outside of restaurant management stuff, but the entrepreneurial world was real estate. Then, just through a decade of, building relationships and coaching. And, then I started a big entrepreneurial community that was focused on networking, but personal and professional development, right? So not only just being in community with other like-minded people, but having a specific focus on growing both personally and professionally. I brought in speakers from all over. So that kind of just transpired to an incredible national network. A lot of my speakers were doing amazing business, growing different businesses, consulting, all that stuff. And then through my business coach, he just planted the seed with me, just trying to think bigger of how I can really leverage my national relationship capital. A few things I was always good at doing was building authentic relationships and also connecting the dots for people to expedite their success through relationship capital, through people that trusted me, that were doing amazing things, right? So then I kind of ultimately just kind of started a growth advisory business where I just leverage relationship capital. I connect the dots for entrepreneurs and business people nationally. And in that growth advisement birth of that company, one of my good friends he was co-founder of a company called LifeGuides. And I joined them also as a growth leader to take a market-making company. It's a market-making, non-clinical mental health company called LifeGuides, which that was the same mission that I was serving with my community of the Harvest, kind of building community, but it's like peer-to-peer mentorship, learn from somebody who's been through that walk that you're trying to go through or going through. They've created a healthcare platform that gives people peer-to-peer mentorship in every single life situation you can imagine, and both professional too. So, God took my goal and dream of the Harvest. I was like, man, how could I impact the world with what my skill set is, God, what you put me here to do? And he answered by, pretty much giving me the vehicle of LifeGuides now. So that's a company I'm a growth leader for, outside of just doing my own specific, strategic advisement in my real estate stuff. So pretty long answer, but over, 15 years of being in business, it kind of boiled down to 3 pillars, really. And that's kind of what we're building off of today.
So Devin, I'm also a real estate guy. Well, mostly a lawyer, but real estate's my first love. So how did you get into real estate? What was the impetus to get you started?
All right. So I was in restaurant management. And I mean, it even goes back before that. I'm going to speed up a long story short, but for the most part, I wanted to go to college to play football. Got letters junior year, was all-star at my school, was anticipating going to college, got kicked off the team my senior year. Whole new coaching staff came in, and I hold myself fully accountable. I was the captain of the team. New coaching staff come in, and I just they made an example out of me, kind of riding my what, because I was the captain. And I ended up during, like, it's not called spring training. What is it? The double sessions during the summer. Ultimately, I said something under my breath and cursed at a coach and ended up getting kicked off the team as a captain with plans to go to college. So my life shifted from there. So then I was like, man, my grades ain't getting my ass into college. You know what I mean? So I was like, I need to figure out something. And at that time, I was in the restaurant business, and my GM, this was at Carrabba's. I had a GM there, and I was like, man, I don't need a college degree to be a GM at one of these restaurants. And man, you can make six figures. I don't know anybody in my family that's ever made six figures. So I was like, and I don't need a college degree, and I'm here. Like, I could do this. So my first path was like, all right, I wanted to get through that restaurant business so that I could be a GM, and then became the youngest restaurant manager in the whole franchise. It's a national franchise. But again, I was still young at that time. Became the front of house manager, and had a 20-year-old front of house manager of people I'd pretty much grown up with. Did something stupid with a girl. Next thing you know, the JVP found out about it, and bang, I got fired, right? And that was my plan. So then I was like, damn, I got to figure out something else. So at that time, I ended up, I'm trying to remember this. At that time, I started doing bartending. Then I found myself, I had a clothing line in Philly with an artist who I met through the restaurant business, which was pretty cool. And then fast forward a little bit later, I became partners in a pizzeria. Where I was like, maybe a restaurant, I'm going to get into the pizza business. But at that same time, I was watching this, I came across the show Million Dollar Listing, right? And I was like, man, I've always known that I wanted to live a big life. Like, I just, from where I came from, stuff like that, it was just one of those things to where I just wanted to live, just differently than what I was exposed to. Like, I wanted nice things. I wanted to build a big, incredible life. I wanted to do vacations, all these things, right? And that show, I was like, man, these guys are driving beautiful cars. Like, this looks like a great job. I mean, they're showing beautiful houses. Like, man, I would love to do that. And that kind of planted the seed. So then I went and got my real estate license. Probably have the world record of failing the most real estate tests the first year. I actually had to go back to school the next year because I expired. And then that's how bad I wanted it, right? So then I ended up passing the next year. And yeah, man, that's what kind of got me into real estate. It was like, I knew I can build a big life with it, and I didn't need a college degree, right? So that was kind of like, all right, that was my start, in my entrepreneurial journey. And now you look back, Million Dollar Listing, 90% of it's all staged, blah, blah, blah. But guess what? It did motivate me at that time. And, that's kind of one of the reasons that sent me down that vision of real estate.
I believe you're from Philly, right? I mean, what was it like, and what did your family do then, that actually stirred? I mean, you saw the Million Dollar Listing, but what was your like growing up like? What kind of family?
So I lived in South Philly, my first part of, like, from like 0 to 7 or 8. Then I moved to Northeast Philly. Little bit of background on me. Like, I'd never met my biological dad. My mom, who's my father in my life now, happened to be my mother's boyfriend when they were like 14 years old. Like, they'd known each other forever, and they were boyfriend and girlfriend. And then, long story short, at some point they broke up, and my mom ended up getting pregnant within that time that they broke up. That guy didn't want her to have me. And then, next thing you know, she, nobody pretty much wanted her to have me at that time. She was young, but regardless, she was like, no, I'm going to have the baby. And then, when she was pregnant, then my now father, who was her boyfriend younger, that was a tough little situation for him too. But he was also wild at that age too, to be honest. But not that I know, but like from what my mom says and stuff like that, and what he tells me now. But anyway, when she was pregnant, he came back, and, it was pretty, at that time it was cool because he supported her while she had me. And then, after a year later, it was kind of tough on him because I wasn't technically his kid. So it got to him, and then he left. Right. So then it was just me, my mom. I lived in South Philly with my grandma, small little row home house. I had always had family members living with us in like this probably 800 square foot house. But you know what? It was so fun. My mom always did everything she could to give me an incredible life, like playing sports, like everything, right? So it was amazing memories at that young age. But the reality was it was, like we had everything. I would say I had everything that like I need it, you know what I mean? But anything extra I had to work for, which is a blessing now. That turned me to who I am today. So then I moved to Northeast Philly. And then by the time I was like 12 years old, that's when my father, Frank, not my bio, again, I don't know him, but he came into my life at 12. And then, that at that point, then we moved to Northeast Philly. And then in high school, we moved to South Jersey, so up until, my younger years, like I never like to say, man, I come from nothing, but for the most part, I mean, it was funny. I took my kids there at night. We were going in Philly for something. Maybe it was, I forget what it was. And we took them by my old house in South Philly. My daughter was like, Dad, I see why. She's 8. She was like, Dad, I see why you're so fearless.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was, I was blessed. I had great memories, but the reality was we didn't have an abundance of finances, say to me, and like we weren't going the stuff that we know now, people going to like what I do for my kids now, like the vacations and the shore, like, we just didn't have the funds to do all that stuff. You know what I mean? I'm in my neighborhood now. I see these damn kids with these electric bikes. I mean, you teach at these schools, like $2,500 bikes. These kids are taking them to school. I'm like, what? You know what I mean? Like never was that ever even I think maybe my parents' car was $2,500 at that time.
Devin, one of the topics we talk about, whenever we do this show is what triggered that, because we talk about whether entrepreneurs are born or if it's learned. I think you're born with it, but you can also learn it. That's my theory, but I have nothing to back that up other than my own perspective and what I've seen. Because every kid wants a big life, right? Every kid is like, oh, one day I'm going to be rich, one day I'm going to be in the NFL, whatever it is. But was there a one thing that made you go, oh, wait, I could do this?
The one thing that kind of pushed me into like starting a business was I didn't need a college degree. You know what I mean? Like, and that's so ingrained with you when you're young. It's like, man, if you don't go to college and get a degree, you're screwed. You know what I mean? Like that was always a thing. So that's a little bit of it to where it was like, I need to do something, you know what I mean? To where I want to make a lot of money. So what is that? That also doesn't need a college degree. Right. And when I saw that show, I'm like, these guys make a lot of money. It doesn't need a college degree. And like, all I need to do is pass this real estate test. Right. So that also and then made me like, I think also just, what triggered me was, just things at a young age when you see other people experiencing things. And, I don't want to say a struggle, but like, like there's things that I do now that I do now because I wish I had it when I was younger. And it's a beautiful, like that's a, like, and that doesn't necessarily mean monetary things too, man. It's like, I am the father I am today because I wish I had that. You know what I mean?
So why'd you start the clothing company?
At some point, if it's not already written, somebody needs to write a book about ultimately the talent that's in the restaurant industry, right? So many times you go to a restaurant and, you're like, and John, you're in LA, right?
LA and San Antonio. I go back and forth between the two.
So many times people can just go into a restaurant, right? And, you have a server and, sometimes people could try, they're just a server, right? You get some people just treat them the wrong way. And what you'll find, man, a lot of these servers are just in a transition period, right? Like they were doing something cool or they have a crazy skill set, but they're just in this transition period because they need to make money because in some restaurants, you can make more serving than working a regular job and have flexibility to start working on building your dream outside of that. So what I've learned in the restaurant, there was just so much talent. I see people now today, like some of my business colleagues were servers with me and now they're running successor law attorneys, all this stuff. And one of the gentlemen that I work with, I'm still good friends with today, his name is Taki. And he just has a gift of art. He would paint murals, portraits, Lauryn Hill, all the celebrities in Philly, and not even just in Philly. Like, there's a gentleman named Charlie Mack. He was pretty much Will Smith's bodyguard. He's like the man in Philly. He painted at his wedding. Kevin Hart, Meek Mills, anybody like these paintings, dude, look like there's some things where it's like, all right, you practice enough, you'll get good. And then you get to see a talent. It's like, I don't care how long you practice. Like, you ain't doing this shit. You ain't going to get it down like this. Like, there is a gift here that is God given, and it's just unbelievable, right? So that's what he was. So I was working with Taki, and a long time ago, he had a clothing line, right? And it was, a big clothing line. And then, for one reason or another, he kind of went away from it. And then he was doing all these art shows. And this is when I was in the restaurant business with him. So I would go to these art shows, and then I would go with him too, because we were good friends. When a celebrity came in town, he would just go and paint a portrait, right? And show up. He havoc. And this, like, think about, he taught me everything that I needed to know about building a personal brand on social media, building a brand on social media. A lot that I do today and learn was from him, right? So he always showcased the bad, the good, everything about his life on social media. He was very good at telling the story of his life on social media. So he would go and seek out these people and paint these portraits and find somebody who could get him in there. And then he'd surprise them. They'd take a photo together. And then what would he do? They would post it. He would get tagged, and then his followers went up. And that's how he started gaining his influence, by putting that sweat equity in there, showing up when most people wouldn't do that shit. Right. So he would show up and take pictures and all that stuff. So I was like, man, like, I've always just followed him with all this stuff. And then he was talking, I think maybe he mentioned it to me. He's like, man, I'm thinking of like doing another clothing line. You know what I mean? And, he was talking to me about it, and I was like, I was young too. I'm like, shit, yeah, let's do it. This sounds awesome. So I was like, I guess you'd say an investor or whatever. And it was cool. Like, we had a big launch party. We had tons of people there. We were doing events. The one thing we didn't do is run it like a business. You know what I mean? Like, it was cool. We had the biggest radio stations wearing our stuff. But eventually it fizzled out because what I know now, we didn't really treat it like a business. You know what I mean? But it was a great learning experience. I met some really great people that I'm still connected with on Instagram right now too, that we go back and forth with, man. It's just a beautiful thing when you value people. You never know, man, that lifetime value of that relationship. 10 years later, I'm doing stuff with people that I met 10 years ago. And it's solely because we're still connected on social media too.
Another thing we talk a lot about is, because I know when I was reading your website, there was stuff about employees and treating employees well, human capital. You just mentioned. Um, what are your thoughts about what's happening in AI?
Man, that it's so crazy, especially with my company LifeGuides. We just left they had a big HR conference called Transform. We hosted a big leadership retreat in Arizona, where we had, the largest HR organization in the world, SHRM, they sit on our board. And they sell LifeGuides. And all the topic was about AI, right? That's it. Like, and in the corporate world, it's like, it's coming so fast. You know what I mean? Now, let me be clear. I'm not a professional at AI. I mean, look, I love how efficient, like, it can get you to 0 to 1 very quick. I think that there's still always, and that's where LifeGuides is such a market maker, and we're disrupting a lot of stuff because we've been able to scale that human to human connection. Yes, we leverage AI to make things efficient, to track data and all that stuff, but there will always be a need for human to human connection, right? That has been since the beginning of time. So, in my personal opinion, I mean, I use it every day. You know what I mean? Like, just like everything else, if you use it as a tool, it can be incredible. But I also know that you always have to develop your human to human interactive skills, your people skills, because at some point deals get closed when you are in front of somebody, or you are on a Zoom, or you are like, at some point, human to human, there's going to need to be some trust and influence happening there. So I'm a fan of AI. Like, you can think of the crazy, look, it's going to replace jobs, but historically too, yeah, but it's also going to create a lot of jobs too. Now, maybe it's going to, it's going to cut more jobs than replacing. I don't know. But all I can say is I do love evolution. And I do think that it can advance the skills and make help entrepreneurs, anybody, be more efficient, make more money, have better ideas. Dude, I'm talking to and I just the basics. I use Chat GPT and I'm talking to that thing, talking business, talking strategy every single day. And because I'm doing that, I'm gaining more clients because I figured out a new way to speak to somebody. You know what I mean? So just like everything else, man, it's like if you don't try and learn it, then okay, the people that do learn it are gonna blow right by you.
You know what's funny about that, Devin? You say that, and we both during the pandemic, you started the Harvest Group, I started Coffee with Cooper. A lot of people didn't want to jump on board about doing Zoom meetings. Oh, we're doing Zoom. Because I think a lot of times what happened was when you do a Zoom meeting, like these group meetings, networking things, when you go into a breakout room, the people who are idiots who had nothing to say but just wore a nice suit would come in and they'd have nothing to say. And a lot of older people, and I'm older, so but people my age and older would say, I don't want to do Zoom. And I said, you're missing out. Just like with AI, I don't use AI. I get too dependent on technology. I have those damn smart lights. And last night there must have been a shortage, and the light in the bedroom kept blinking off and on and on. And I was so pissed off, I didn't know what to do. So I just unplugged it. But the other plug was still in, and that clicking. So I still have to get an AI, but I come from a creative background. I come from the artist background where I want to write. I want to write on my own, but I will, eventually get to AI. But so that's just the funny thing how we do get stuck on technology, but AI, you have to learn it. You're right. I mean, because John, you talk about it all the time. You talked about John's son sends out trucks. We had a big conversation about will AI take the place of trucks and self-driving cars. So it's a very interesting concept right now, and everyone really has to be aware of it.
AI is one of these polarizing things, and this is pretty interesting. I look at it like what web was in 1994, right? When everyone was like, "Oh, there's this thing called the internet," right? But then only a few people were using it, and then suddenly you can't live without that and email and everything else. But what's funny is I'm 57. My son is what is he, 30 something. And I'm arguing with him about technology because I'm saying, hey, you need this. And he's like, nah, I got a phone and and my business is people. It's not machines, and so it's really interesting where things are going. But what I think, for business, obviously it's a tool that helps you be more effective or efficient or however you use it. But what I think a lot of people don't think about is what's going to be the explosion in creativity. So, for example, I have great ideas, but I'm not a painter. I'm not a writer. I can't write music. There's all these different things, right? I met some guys at South by Southwest a couple Sundays ago from LA, and they basically have a company where they have uh, 200 AI artists, right, from all over the world. So these are artists that they've created. They have, I think, 8,000 songs, and they are grossing about 50K a month on those songs. Uh, and one of their artists, even though completely virtual artist, is a top 10 K-pop artist in Korea. That's how so creativity, right? And then I was talking to a good friend of mine that was a big video director, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm creating um, videos just almost virtually now." So he'll take a concept and he'll have maybe one or two humans in it, but the rest is AI. And because he has one or two humans in it, a lot of times people don't catch that it's AI. Whereas if he had all AI, people catch it.
I was just talking to a guy yesterday. I hosted like an event, and one of the guys that were there, he has a big marketing company, but it's like he's got a big studio out in Colorado. But he was like, I'm bringing my new one, I'm bringing it to Morristown. Right. And he goes, what I'm going to do is it's like 12,000 square feet. He goes, the one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be able to have people come in. Right. And let's just say you're a business owner and you want to do content. I'm going to create, like, you're going to be in my studio for like X amount of dollars one time. I'm going to create your avatar with the cameras, all that stuff, the AI, all that stuff. And then boom, you're done. We don't need you, your pictures, no nothing. And then they're going to just roll with your content like it's you. So now check this out. In movies, like, dude, at some point, they're just going to be like Tom Cruise, dude. Like, come here. You're just going to come into the studio once. That's it. And we're going to bzz your body, like every little facial feature. And that's it. And we just want to license your look and your voice. And you don't have to do a thing. That's it. And you're going to be in a movie and nobody's going to know.
That yeah, that's pretty amazing. But it's you don't even have to go into a studio anymore. So at our farm, our marketing team, I mean, I write these scripts about what I want to talk about, whatever weird California law just came out or whatever, and I send the script over, and the AI that they're using, and I have no idea what it is to be honest with you, uh, basically took all of those videos that I shot from the past. So it has my voice, my face, everything, my mannerisms, and then it creates an English version, a Mandarin version, a Spanish version, and a Korean version. And the reason why we do those languages is because we have lawyers that speak those languages at the firm, right? But when you look at some of those videos and you see me speaking in Mandarin, you're like, wait, that looks like he's speaking in Mandarin, but I know he doesn't speak Mandarin, right? And it's wild. You know, I'm looking forward to the days where they bring back some of these old celebrities that I used to love, you know, like Steve McQueen. I love Steve McQueen, but who's the Steve McQueen of today? Maybe Brad Pitt. I don't know. Maybe that's about as close as you can get. But really, there aren't those types of celebrities anymore. There aren't the Marilyn Monroes. There aren't, you know what I mean? So it'll be great, you know, for me. I would love a modern movie with Steve McQueen and Charles Bronson and some of these guys I used to love from way back in the, you know, 60s and 70s.
So I was going to ask, because me and John have talked about how entrepreneurs, you know, they have to know they're going to fail sometimes. And I was wondering why, you know, you had told me, I remember Harvest and it was going well, but now you, as you said, you dissolved that. So you told me earlier today, you dissolved that and you started, you know, you got involved with LifeGuides. Why did you dissolve Harvest? Is this because you thought you could grow it bigger? Because I always know, we always talk about entrepreneurs are always looking for, they always want to find the next big thing. So did you think this was a stepping stone? Because I know Harvest, John, if you don't know, Harvest was he would have a bunch of people and they would pay a monthly fee and they would talk about, they'd hold each other accountable and they'd talk about, you know, business and all that. So instead of just regular networking. So what was the transition? Because that was successful. You were making cash off that. Did you think there was a bigger money on the horizon with LifeGuides?
So listen, man, I'm a believer. I'm a faith-driven guy. You know what I mean? Like the direct answer to that question is God, right? And I'll explain to you exactly how it happened. So I was, you know, I was so there was a lot with the harvest that, you know, it was mentally taxing, right? Because look, everybody wants to network, but when it comes to personal development and coaching, a lot of people say they want to change and want to do the work to change, but they really don't. Like, not many people truly want to make the consistent commitment to change. And then what happens? All the excuses come out in the way. They blame everybody, blah, 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 blah. They haven't showed up, blah, blah, blah. So that was the foundation of the harvest wasn't a networking group. It was like, hey, we're going to bring in speakers. We're going to teach you guys how to grow your business, your brand. This is all stuff that works, how to get your habits in place, like how to cut your, like how to do this. And we'd had people that lost 70 pounds, you name it. But it was like, it became so mentally taxing for me because, Steve, it really wasn't for the money. I mean, I could do one real estate deal and make more than I made for the harvest. You know what I mean? And the reality was, like, I cared so much that when like people missed the call, like I was like, man, they need to be on this call. You know what I mean? Like the stuff that they were struggling about, we would be talking about the solution on that call and they weren't there. So it was just, I cared so much. I felt like I cared more than people actually cared about. When people came there, they had a specific, like that was one of my, like, what is it that you're trying to work on? Like, what do you want to elevate in? People say it, but they don't like, you know what I mean? Like that long-term commitment. So it was fulfilling. I met so many great relationships and I would pray. This is the story, man. Every day before when I walk my dog, I would always pray to God, like, God, you know, use my gifts to impact the world. Like, you know what you have me here for. You know what my skill sets are. You know, I can speak life into people. You know what my goals and dreams are. Like, help me impact the world. Help me help millions of people. And I never understood where he would take me with that. Right. I just, what is he going to do? Help me make the harvest global? You know how hard that is? Like I got 100 members locally. That was hard enough. You know what I mean? And it was just a mentally taxing thing all the time. Plus, I had my other business too. And then something happened to where I don't want to go too much in a rabbit hole, but I started having some like chest and heart and health issues. I got rushed to the ER, and I was just like, it was like a period where then I was really like, what's stressing me out? Like sometimes success is an elimination process, right? Like what is truly not fulfilling you and serving you and elevating you. And in that moment, man, I just felt like the harvest was more of a stressor on me than something that I thoroughly enjoyed, because people were saying they were in there to change. I want to help people change. And the people that weren't committed were getting results. But when people weren't, I would take that to heart. When people were missing the calls out. So it ended up being much more of a mental stressor, not good for my mental health, more than what I thought it would be. And in that moment, I was like, man, so that was when I started thinking about it, right? I'm like, man, I need to cut out anything that's not serving my life right now. That's not giving me a high frequency that I'm not like completely fulfilled in. And at that same time, my friend who I met 10 years ago when I was introduced through my business coach, I've been, connecting with him. He built and sold a healthcare software trading company, Scrimmage, and then he co-founded with the creator of Match.com, LifeGuides. For years I've been following, and then I had him come in and be a speaker in the harvest. And then I learned more about, like when I started catching back up with him, about what LifeGuides is and the power of it. And I'm like, holy shit, dude, this is something that can change. This is like peer-to-peer mentorship at scale, but like now it's for enterprise. Like we just launched in the University of Tennessee, like thousands, like this is a way that we can give thousands of people, everyday employees, everyday leaders, access to find a mentor that can help them get through any specific, like, and by the way, that's not one mentor talking about a bunch of different things that they haven't done, which is the worst thing in coaching. Life Guides is you pick a cat, let's just say, man, I just found out my mother has dementia. That's the category. You go into caring for caregivers. That's the category. Then you scroll through all the topics and you say, caring for somebody with dementia. You click that topic. It gives you 8 different guides, people who've been through helping their loved one, their mother, their father navigate through dementia. And they've been through it, navigated it successfully, and they want to help somebody else who's going through it. So they created this, and now we are the most engaged employee benefit by far, not even a competition, because the market's seeing how powerful mentorship is. And most people don't really need therapy. There was just never a solution to give them somebody to talk to that's been through it before until Life Guide. So within this journey, I've always been facilitating introductions nationally to Derek. And I was like, hey, man, I really know where this is going. If there's ever a time for me to help you with this and join this mission and cause, like as a partner, equity, and like help do this, just let me know. I just planted that seed in that time that God was making me slow down, right? In the heart. And by the way, in that same time, I rebranded my whole real estate company, cut out some partners, that still great relationships, but it just didn't make business sense. So like I did that, which is going to elevate my future too. Within these 3 months of my hardest health times in the world, and I'm very disciplined with my health, to where I was in the hospital thinking I was having a heart attack, all this stuff, major shifts happened. Derek calls me, hey, man, we want you to be a part of what we're doing here. Like, can you? And that was in that time. And then I was like, done. God spoke. This is the vehicle that's going to help me impact the world, fulfill all of my future financial goals, my mission goals, all that stuff. So at that time, that's where I made the decision. I was like, all right, cut out, dissolve the harvest, flip that into my real estate companies called Legacy Real Estate. I created a free community called the Legacy Real Estate Business Network because I understand the power of building community behind your brand. So I have a free big Facebook group with a bunch of business owners. Eventually, I'm going to get to doing those events and again, free, not charging nothing, just providing value to the local business owners. Started an Instagram live show to showcase them too. But that was like God, like opened that door up and answered that prayer. Say, you want to impact millions and billions of people? Here goes the vehicle that's going to do it. And it's the only vehicle right now that is the market making solution for this. And that's kind of how that happened.
So Devin, I have a question that's a little bit off topic, and it's not really part of the show, but it just interests me because In the last few years, I'm running into that where I didn't used to run into it before. So I've always been a faith-based person also, but I lived in LA forever, right? And in LA, that's not really, maybe I'm just not meeting the right people, but that's not really a thing. Most people say I'm spiritual. They don't even really say, hey, I'm a follower of Christ or anything like that, right? Uh, and then the time that I spent in San Antonio was completely different, the complete opposite thing, right? So it felt a little more comfortable to walk that path or whatever. So just like what was the impetus of being an entrepreneur? What was the impetus of your faith since you've talked about it so much?
My life experience, I don't want to make a broad statement, but for the most part, I was raised Catholic growing up. And my experience was, and again, again, I was just with my mom for the first 12 years. So it was a little bit of a different scenario, but growing up, it was like maybe we went to church for Christmas Eve or Christmas or something like that. We've always believed in God, but it was more of like, hey, if you do something wrong, God's going to punish you. It was like an accountability. Like we believed in God, but it was like, God's why you do something wrong. Like that was God in my life. Right. And then, as I was getting older, I really started going down and that was just pretty much, we never really went to church, like really ever. But I prayed, like my mom always taught me to pray. But for the most part, it was always just that like overhead accountability. Like, we know that there's a God and he will punish you if you do something wrong. And then if something bad happens, pray to God and see if he will save you. Right. Which is what most people, when shit's going wrong, then people are praying to God. Right. Which no judgment, but for the most part, I started getting really deep into my personal development journey. And this is when I was living in South Philly and I had St. Monica Church at the corner. And every morning I heard the beautiful church bells ringing. Man, it was just such a beautiful thing, man. I loved it every morning. I was like, man, it's at the corner. I'm going to start, let me just start going. Like, it's right there. I can't not go. Right. So went there, started going, and it was just like, so not relatable. It was just almost like, God, I checked the box off. Look, man, I'm here. Like I did it. You know what I mean? But I didn't really leave understanding anything. It was just like, man, just trying to get through it. You know what I mean? And I was, man, there has to be more. Yeah. As I was listening to motivational speakers and stuff like that, and I put up on Facebook, I said, hey, I'm moving back to Jersey. And I was like, is there any churches where it feels like I'm listening to a motivational speaker? And it's not just like the guy in the robe, like, say your sins, confess your sins, and blah, 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 judgment, judgment, judgment. Right. And my buddy, Ryan Regina said, hey, you should go check out Marlton Assembly of God. Right. Just come with me one time. And I went there. It was my wife, by the way, she was pretty influential because she's always like, she comes from like the put together household, right? The picket fence, or like everything perfect. You know what I mean? I don't want to say perfect, but the vacay, like she was like the life that I looked up to as a kid. Like, man, that would be awesome. Disney World, all that stuff. But they always went to church. Like they were very big and community service, giving back. Like they were always a faith-based household. So I would go when I started dating her, I would go with her parents to their like Lutheran church in Morristown, still kind of the same type of vibe of like the cat, like maybe a little bit different. It was still like, man, this is like tough to be here. You know what I mean? I hate to say it that way, but I'm just being transparent. So I went to Marlton Assembly of God, and that's a non-denominational Christian church. So people from all over the place, all different races, all different countries, like you go in there. And that's the first time I experienced like a Christian church, dude. And I went in there and after I felt the Holy Spirit, I heard the worship music. The pastor came out and it felt like I was listening to a motivational speaker. I was crying, like tears out of my eyes as I'm listening to, like, I didn't know what was happening to me. Like, I was like, wow, like the Holy Spirit just like went through my body. And I was like, where has this been all of my life? And then everything changed from there, dude. I started getting me and my pastor have a great relationship. And, I still have a lot of work to do. You know what I mean? Like I still got to learn verses and all that stuff. But that was kind of like when everything changed to where it became religion to relationship. You know what I mean? And now I host business instead of my harvest events. I host business on mission events, which is a faith and business event that I do with my church now that I started with. Actually, I pulled Ryan Regina in to do it and a few others. And it's a monthly meeting and it's tied around faith and business. And like next month, We have 3 Chick-fil-A owners who come to our church and they're going to speak. So it's just like God has been just really, and it's not easy, right? I got spirit baptized. I don't want to say I'm all in, but like I also hold myself accountable. Like Devin, if you're all in, you should be in that scripture every single day. You know what I mean? So I'm real with myself, but like that's where everything changed for me spiritually. And it went from, I always say, religion to relationship.
That's awesome. I was thinking about that a few weeks ago. There must be some Christian-based business organizations, right? I do have a few clients that are Christian-based, and there's just a difference, right? They certainly are a little easier to deal with, a little more upstanding. I don't know if that's the right words, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's just different. The way they treat everything is just a little bit different. The way they move is different, which I like.
It's like one of those things where, look, I always like to say to people, because it's like, there's just a stigma. Like people go to church, they think they got it all together. And it's like, dude, you're like church is a hospital for the broken. You know what I mean? Like we're all broken. You know what I mean? And the reality is it's like, look, just because you go to church and you're Christian doesn't mean that you're perfect or like, and then people, well, I know this one person who went there, or I went to this one church and it was to, or this priest was this, and they make this blank. It's like, all right, well, there's a billion realtors. A lot of them are crappy. Are you just gonna make a blanket statement that, like, we're talking about food, right? Okay, well, you go to a cheesesteak place and it's a crappy cheese. Are you going to walk around and say cheesesteaks stink? I'm never going to a cheese. No, you just haven't been to the right one. So yes, there are people who will preach, Christian faith, and like the reality is nobody. And then you'll have that select few that don't operate that way ethically. But what you'll find is a lot of mature, spiritual driven people, they have this peace, man. And they have these core values that a lot of times they're just people naturally that are easier to deal with. Cause they just, of the ones that are in line with that, man, it's like their values are people like you don't got to worry about not trusting them. You know what I mean? Like they have a peace to them. They truly, if they're really following Christ, like they don't judge people. And you can never do something so wrong to where they're not going to try and help. Like that's the real way to live. You know what I mean? Like you're never going to do something where they're not going to try and help you too.
Now, you guys talked about core values, and you're both faith based. Now, you're both also family men. I mean, John, you have a very young son now. Devin, you have 3 kids. What role do you think, as a family man and being an entrepreneur, does being a family man help or hinder? Because one, I'm sure you want to provide for your family, so you keep going. But also, me and John have talked, there's still, you're going to fail as an entrepreneur. There's a chance you can fail. And if you have a family, I mean, how does it play for both of you guys? How does that play a role? Is it always like, I'm sure, of course, you choose your family first, but does that ever hinder decisions for either of you when you think of an idea or try and expand business where you're like, I really don't want to do this because it might hurt my family?
When I was living in Seattle and I decided to be a lawyer, but I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer, and you can only do that in LA. And at that time, I had a wife and 2 young kids, and everyone in the world was telling me, no, just go to law school, here in Seattle. And I said, well, let me apply in LA. I got into everywhere that I applied, but I also got in Seattle. So that was a stressor for my family because I left, right? My wife didn't want to move. She's like, no, we're from here. My entire family's here. I'm not just going to move to LA with you. So I left my family, and that was a selfish decision for sure. But because it worked out, then it worked out well for everybody. Because once I got through law school and then was doing well, it was easy then to bring my family over because they could see that I was doing well. But it could have gone the other way. It could have gone where I totally flunked out of law school or whatever else, and then even if I had moved back uh, to Seattle, it wouldn't be as easy to get your family back, when you're a failure, right? So, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would do that now, but I certainly have a lot more resources to take risks. But back then, I had zero resources and did take those risks, and luckily it worked out. But they were all selfish. It was all about me. It wasn't about anybody else.
Look, man, there's always a cost, but I just think it's not the quantity of time, it's the quality of time. You know what I mean? And it's making sure I'm present. And like I value them, and I'm here and I am present with them, and to where there's never going to be a balance by any means. You know what I mean? Like there's everybody else says you got to have balance, and I've heard of by many people that shit is impossible. Like if you're trying to really set yourself up in your business, you're not going to always have that balance, but it's like a rhythm almost. It's like a flow of like, look, man, I'm not going to be away from my kids that long, right? Like, but and I will show them. And I always, when I'm with them, like, I was just in Vegas. I got to be in Texas not too long, and they hate when I leave. It's just for a few days, but I explained to them what I'm doing. Literally, I said to my daughter when I was going out to Vegas, I explained to her, like, I'm going out there because daddy's trying to help a lot of people, right? If I can get LifeGuides into an organization with 4,000 employees, we have 4,000 families right now that can get peer-to-peer mentorship, make their marriage stronger, make their health stronger, make their frequent, like all that stuff. So I always explain what it is that I'm doing. And believe it or not, my kids are young, but man, you got to hear them repeat the shit and the lessons that I said to them 3 years ago. Like they are sponges to this. So I just don't do things and not explain why I'm doing them. Which that helps. But I also, I'm present. I'm also not away that long. And the beautiful thing also is like a lot of my stuff now, like I can do from home or whatever. But still, like when I'm down here, like they can get annoyed. But again, I got to always be intentional to explaining why I'm doing what I'm doing. But yeah, dude, there's always going to be a little bit of a cost here, a little bit of a cost there. But man, you just got to find a way to really, when you do spend that time, show them that you love them, and just always explain what it is, what you're doing.
It's funny, John, you're like this. I told Devin this a while ago. I don't know where we were, but I said in like 10 years, we're going to see Devin on TV. He's going to be having he'll be a pastor for this big church. And I just see it. And I said that a while ago. And it's funny, one of those things, I can see it happening, because he's really committed. And, before we wrap up, we always like to say, give some advice to young entrepreneurs. John, you always give advice. So we'll get some from you, Devin.
Yeah, the advice that I'll give is something that we've given before and we talk about all the time, like what makes an entrepreneur. It's the not giving up that makes you a great entrepreneur because everything has a lesson in it. All those things that are failures have a lesson, and it's something you learn for the next one. The ones that don't make good entrepreneurs are the ones that fail and then give up.
Seek mentorship. Seek mentorship. Ask for help. Find somebody who's already walked the path. I've lived this my whole life, and now I'm building a company right now who's doing it at scale. And when I do talks to businesses, I have what helped me a C4 method, right? 4 C's. First C is courage, right? You got to have the courage to want change. You got to have the courage to think big. You got to have the courage to want to take a stand on your health. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is, that next level, stretching yourself, a goal or a dream, like first and foremost, you got to have the courage to take action. Second C, coaching, right? Coaching, immediately find somebody who's been through there. Coaching, mentorship, same thing, whether you got to invest in a coach or, find somebody, but like find somebody who's walked the path. Don't pay the dummy tax if you don't have to, right? The next thing is community. The next C is community. Find community of people on that same mission, your surroundings, who you surround yourself with, right? If you're trying to be an actor, find a community of people in that same race, right? Be around, hey, what are they doing? Let's do this together. And the last 4 is consistency, right? Do not give up. You only fail if you quit, right? We just talked about that. So mentorship, ask for help, find somebody who's been through the path that you're trying to get to. The number one best piece of it, outside of following God, the best piece of advice you can have for entrepreneurship, if you're thinking about this, seek mentorship. You don't have to pay the dummy tax of losing millions of dollars because you're too big in your ego to ask somebody for help or to pay somebody for help. So I didn't just give that advice. I created a methodology, right? Courage, coaching, find community, and be consistent. And that's how you can walk down that path instead of just being told about the path.
Devin, how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way? Give your info.
Instagram, Devin DiNofa, DEVIN DINOFA, LinkedIn, Devin DiNofa, DevinDiNofa.com, DEVIN DINOF as in Frank, A. Yeah, man. And then Devin at Devin DiNofa. I mean, I got multiple business emails, but I just want to keep it simple. Follow me on Instagram, Devin DiNofa. Follow me on LinkedIn, Devin DiNofa, and you will see me every single day. Then you'll know how to get in contact with me.
People, you can follow me. You can go to my coopertalk.net. I have over 1,065 episodes up there. You can email me at coopertalk.net, at coopertalk1 at Instagram, at coopertalk on Twitter, and coopertalk, well, Steve Cooper on Facebook. And also lawsuits and lessons, people. Now, you got to go and subscribe. Go to YouTube and all that great stuff. And go listen to it on all the podcast channels. We have a new show every 2 weeks. And John, how do people get in touch with you? Give your spiel.
Defendmybiz.com. And I don't really have a spiel, but I do want to say thank you, Devin. This was a really good, inspirational learning lesson for me. So you never know when it comes from. And I expected just an interview, but I'm motivated. So you're definitely a good motivator. And Steve, I always appreciate how well you are at what you do, or how well you do what you do. So thank you both.
All right, well, so people, please check us out. And that's it. It was a great show tonight. Have a good night, guys.